Okay, so I think we'll kick things off. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. My name's Sally McDonald, and I'm a Client Services Director here at Alterian in our Bristol office. For those of you that haven't joined the webinars before, we relaunched these as part of the company relaunch back in November last year, and we're going to be running these on a monthly basis, and we want to make sure we provide content during these sessions that is focused on you guys, our existing customers and partners, and make sure you can get more value out of the Alterian technology and the relationship with us. This month, we're looking at our hints and tips theme again, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Lee Jones. Lee is one of our consultants in our professional services team and joined Alterian last year after spending 15 years working within the technology and media sector. So for the next 20 minutes, Lee's going to be talking to us about how event data from external systems like your website can be processed into a campaign and really discuss some of the best practice hints and tips around this. But just before I kick off and hand over to Lee to begin, just two housekeeping points. Firstly, we will have some time at the end of the presentation for some Q&A. So if you have any questions that you can think of during the presentation, then if you are logged in via your PC, you can find the Q&A section at the top left-hand side of your screen. And if you can't find that, then please do email myself, customersuccess@alterian.com, as I will be monitoring this. And then secondly, I'll also be recording the session today for you guys to refer back to. So please don't worry about making tons of notes, and we'll make sure the webinar recording is put on the Alterian Academy as soon as possible this week and email out to you guys to access via email. So with all of that said, I'll now hand over to Lee to begin the presentation. So over to you, Lee.
Thanks, Sally, and hello everyone on the line. Today, what I've got in store for you guys is a quick run through of a simplified campaign where we're going to bring in import event tools to load data before any nightly data load would normally take place. This is good because it allows us to react more quickly to customer interaction. It'll enable us to move with more speed than we would if we were waiting, and it should make a significant difference to the level of engagement we receive to our campaign. We'll have a look at a simplified example where we'll use the import event tool in conjunction with triggers to create an immediate automated response to a customer's interaction. We'll use logic based in our tracks and decide how we should act based on this interaction and deliver the most appropriate messaging for the business and for the recipient too. So we'll just look at the type of campaigns that we could use this import tool for. And in brief, basically anywhere that there's ephemeral data, where there's a short window of relevance, the import event tool becomes really useful to us. We could offer a response that offers something of experiential value, sort of a single triggered automation, or something that could come in at a pivotal stage during your journey, sort of in a multi-phase process, like during a purchase or a return flow. With each response, we need to consider the speed at which we need to act, because this will inform our approach to passing the data into our campaign. It's important to only use the import event tool when we need to act within minutes or hours of the interaction. So the types of event we should consider are ones which map closely to the steps towards our campaign goal. The data from the interaction which we import should directly contribute to achieving one of these steps. The data we bring in needs to be in a consistent format which can be used as a trigger in the campaign. We can use the Campaign Manager platform to provide a basis to structure logic around this data. It enables us to make decisions on how we should respond. The type of interaction we can look at here are transactional or contextual interactions. For this session's example, we will look at a transactional example. In our scenario, a customer has browsed to our online store and added some items to their cart. The customer's session has elapsed without the checkout process being completed. We want to react to this with an abandoned cart campaign. It's a classic scenario where there's a lot of evidence to suggest the speed of your action has an impactful outcome on the conversion rate. We will pick up the story from where the website has produced an output file of basket details. We'll then implement the tools we need in our campaign to bring the data in. In doing so, we need to define how the data is stored. Then we can look at how we surface the data. So let's look at how we configure this campaign. So before we begin, let's consider the workflow for our new import event. We need to extract data from the inbound file, which is our event source. We'll need to match the customer via their campaign key to the data feed. And then we'll need to expose the data in our campaign to use as triggers and using logic in our tracks. We can also use the variables that we're writing our data to personalize our creatives. So to do all this, we need to identify the data points required from the event source file, create variables which will be referenced in the campaign, create parameters to map our source file data to, associate the parameters to the variables, and then finally set up import event tool to populate the parameters. So now I'll just jump into an illustration of Campaign Manager, and we'll begin working through setting up the tools we need to run this campaign. First, we'll need to create the parameters and the variable in Variable Manager. We'll kind of work backwards here. So we're creating a location to store the data from the file, and then we'll map the file to these locations. So let's click into Variable Manager. And here you can see we've got tabs for variables and parameters. We can manage all our variables and parameters on this screen. And simply by clicking the plus item at the bottom of the screen, we can add a new parameter or a new variable. I'm going to begin by adding a new variable. So clicking the plus item brings a pop-up, which is a simple form to fill in our details for our variable. Here we can set the propagation level. We can give it a name. I'm going to call it product value. We can set a data type. The important thing to remember when setting up a variable that's linked to a parameter is that the data type either needs to be a text value or a numeric value. I'm going to set product value as a numeric value. Then we can also set a default value for this field if we so wish. We're just going to leave it as blank. Now I just need to repeat the process for creating a parameter. Again, I click the plus icon to bring up the form. I give it a name. Let's match the name. We'll call it product value. And we'll give it a description. And now the next step is to associate this new parameter with our variable. This association makes our parameter data visible within our campaigns through variables. I'm also going to check the numeric value box because we've defined the value as a numeric field. Defining the variable as a numeric value also lets us make value-based decisions within our campaign. For the abandoned basket example, we're going to qualify eligibility to a discount based on this basket value. Okay, now we're ready to create the rules to populate the parameters from the event file. This is where we begin to work with the import events tool. What we're going to have to do is open a campaign. This is our abandoned basket track campaign, and head over to the Events tab. Within the Events tab, we can drag in the Import Events tool. This is on the left of the screen. We've filtered it to Campaigns tools. If we just select it and drag it into the area, we've got the form to enter all the details that we need to extract data from the import event file. So let's set up this form. First, we're going to give it a name, Abandoned Basket, as this is our example. And now we've got a decision to make. We can either use the API event or an FTP event or FTP file feed for the method of the data file arriving at Campaign Manager. In this example, we're going to use an FTP file drop. The FTP location would have been set up within your Campaign Manager setup process. So this is already configured for you. All you need to do is select the correct folders from the drop-downs. Next, we've got the option to define whether we give a unique subfolder location for our files to be dropped into. The reason we might do this is just to silo the files from other events we also might have going on. So to be extra careful with that, only the files that are relevant to this event are processed by this tool. We're going to check this box, and it automatically creates a folder based on the unique event ID. Next, we need to look at the file formats. If you can see that our sample event file at the bottom, which is overly simplified, has values qualified with double quotes and separated by commas. We'll need to populate this in the file format box. We've also got the option to define whether the file has a header row. Ours does, so we'll tick that box. And next we can define the extension that the file will be dropped with. Our file is dropped with a .evt extension as default. Any file that arrives unprocessed will come in with a .evt extension. When the campaign picks up the file via the Import Events tool, if it manages to process the file successfully, the extension will be renamed .done. If for whatever reason this fails, the extension will be renamed .error. The reasons for this erroring usually occurs because a mismatch in the data against what we're mapping against. It's really important that we use a fixed file format when we populate this event tool. Next, there's some important values to extract from our import event file. We need to map the key column, which matches the data to a recipient's unique ID known as the campaign key. We also need to set an event ID. The event ID will qualify whether the file should be processed by the tool. Here you can see our campaign key is 100012 and our event ID is AB dropped. AB dropped exists in column ID 2. Next, we need to map the fields that we're going to extract into parameters. Here you can see we've got item name and item price in columns 3 and 4. All we need to do this is to click on the add button and fill in the blank form that appears. Here you can see we've added the event ID, a description, and then our column names, mapped our columns against the event file. So now we've successfully matched our data to the file. We can use a trigger to create a reaction on our campaign. We have a lot of flexibility with where we can place the trigger. We can use a specific track, we can add it to multiple tracks, or let the trigger take effect anywhere in our campaign. In this example, we're only going to act when our recipient is in a track called Campaign Ready. If we bring that into focus, we can see at the bottom of the track, we've got the option to add a trigger through the plus box. If I click that, we'll bring in a form to fill in to create our trigger. What we'll do is click in the left area of the trigger, in light blue, and we can define the event that we're going to use for our trigger. This is the abandoned basket event that we've just set up. Next, we can set rules about what we're going to do in the track. In this campaign, we're just going to move the recipient to a track to deploy an email. So what we're going to do is use the Go to Tracks tool and drag it directly into our trigger. And then we can set which track we want our recipient to go to. We're going to send them to the Send Reminder track. So now we've sent a message to our recipient. We've created variables within our campaign. So the question is, how do we view what these variables and where do they exist in our campaign? And we've got a couple of places where we can see them. If we hop into the front, so if I just move to the example, back to where we're referencing the variables in our campaign, we're going to use them in our tactic here to personalize our call to action. We're bringing in the item name. We're also going to use them in our track. What we've done is we've set a conditional statement based on the value of our basket. If it's above a certain value, we'll send a discount offer if they don't respond to our first email. So let's look at our example campaign flow we've just set up. An event file has been posted to FTP. The import event tool's checked whether this file is correctly formatted. If it has, we'll rename the file. Next, we try and match against the recipient in our campaign using the campaign key. If we can, we extract the data to the parameters. And then we need to see whether the recipient is in a state where they're ready to be moved into the campaign. This is when they exist in our campaign ready track. If they do, we'll move them forward in the campaign. And we'll also use the variables in our creative and output an email. So now we've deployed our email, we can view which variables we've assigned to each of our audience members. There's a couple of areas we can see this. We go to the campaign overviews tab. We can look at totals and see how many recipients exist in each of our tracks. If we click the State tab, we can see every variable assigned to all our audience that are currently in the campaign under each track. And as they move through the campaign, they generate campaign history. And this is recorded in a campaign history repository. So just to round off the session, here's a quick checklist that I've worked through prior to implementing an import events tool. To qualify the need for intraday data, we must be sure that not only is the data of significance to the outcome of the campaign, but it also needs an action which needs to be made within minutes or hours. We need a solid, consistent source for our data. Inconsistencies with formatting will result in import errors, or worse, could result in fields being mapped to incorrect parameters. The Campaign Manager platform offers us a great deal of flexibility of how data coming in through an event can be used. We can apply business rules to define campaign paths that make sense, but we also must consider the context of the wider universe of ongoing campaigns. We can leverage event and repository data to define the content and the channel of the response. The more targeted we can be, the more effective our campaign will be. And where the campaign does not offer a significant benefit to the consumer, we must act sensibly and put measures in place to avoid repeatedly sending the same content to recipients, and also to avoid training bad behaviour where recipients are expecting to receive offers and discounts for abandoning baskets. So with that, I'll hand back to Sally for questions.
Great, thanks for that, Lee. I appreciate a lot of content to go through there, and yeah, great, thanks for that. I can see we have had some questions that have come through, so I'm just going to open up the Q&A box. So we've had one question. When importing, when you check the file has header, do you also need to skip the first row, or does it automatically do that?
Yes, so that will automatically skip the first row if you define it's got a header.
Okay, and there's an option you just need to, is that an option to tick then to say it's got a header? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's just a tick box in the import event tool.
Great, okay, thank you. We've also had one question come through asking, what advantages are there of going through CM rather than direct to execution channel?
Okay, so CM allows us to bring data in from the repository. It also allows us to make decisions on how best to channel the response. So if we were to output directly to a single channel, we'd kind of miss the opportunity to make decisions based on campaign history and user preference.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. I'm just going to quickly look towards the Q&A box again and the email. It looks like there are no more questions. So on that note, just to wrap up, say thank you very much for joining our webinar today. As a follow-up from today, we definitely recommend you check out our Alterian Academy, which is our one-stop learning portal, as there are quite a few videos on there now where you can look at some of the areas that Lee's mentioned in a bit more detail. So if you log into the Alterian Academy and go to training videos and campaign manager, there is an actual video on there on import event tools, I think polling in tracks and track time tools as well that we definitely recommend. So please do check those out. And if you haven't got access, then please either email myself, customersuccess@alterian.com, or learn@alterian.com. So on that note, thank you very much for your time today, and I'll see you next month, hopefully, for our next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye.